G'day, I am Jackaroo Turu, and on this channel I talk about Australian Aboriginal languages, predominantly about the Pama-Nyungan ones that are spread out over the Australian continent, but also to a certain extent about the non-Pama-Nyungan languages of Australia's top end, as it's known. Now, I have given a lot of thought to how to introduce verbs, and I've also been doing a lot of reading. Because you see, the verbs, they are the most complex unit that we get in Australian Aboriginal languages. This is true for Pama-Nyungan languages. And even though the verbs there can get fairly complex, it is a fact that in some non-Pama-Nyungan languages the verbs are much more complicated. But I will get back to the verbs of non-Pama-Nyungan languages at a later point in time. Now, this is what a verb in a Pama-Nyungan language tends to look like. First, we have the root or the stem, which in and of itself can be fairly complex. Verbs in almost all Pama-Nyungan languages are divided into different verbal conjugations. C here stands for conjugation marker, and it is within parentheses because conjugation markers are only found in some Pama-Nyungan languages. Then, after the possible conjugation marker, we get tense, aspect and mood marking. And what is that? I will get back to that. And I'm feeling somewhat tense about introducing aspect and mood. Anyway, moving on. After tense, aspect and mood comes person marking. Now, according to Dixon, that would be Professor R.M.W. Dixon. According to Dixon, person marking is found in slightly more than half of the Australian languages. And that is why person is also within parentheses. And here Dixon includes all languages, indigenous languages of the Australian continent. And it is a fact that in non-Pama-Nyungan languages, person marking on verbs is found in all languages. And the languages, the Pama-Nyungan ones are fairly different from each other here. There is a smaller number of languages that mark the person of the subject. It is more common to find that languages mark the person of the subject and the person of the direct object. And there are also languages that mark the person of the subject, the person of the direct object, and one more noun phrase. Here it should be noted, though, that person marking does in fact not always occur on the verb. There are Pama-Nyungan languages in which person marking endings, suffixes, occur on the first word of a sentence, regardless of what word class that word belongs to. And there is at least one Pama-Nyungan language in which person markers are placed on the word that immediately precedes the verb. So this gets fairly complicated. And in general, Pama-Nyungan languages are similar here and different from each other here. Here we find a lot of variation. Now, in Pama-Nyungan languages, you tend to find both simple and complex verbs. And these are all examples of ngara simple verbs. Simple verb roots, I should probably say. So the simple verb root may consist of one syllable, like ja, chop, and nya, send. But it may have more syllables than that. It can have 2 syllables, 3 syllables, and in ngara, simple verb roots do not have more than 4 syllables. And these verb roots are fairly long, as you can see. So why the name simple verb root when we have something that is very long and looks quite complicated? That is because these roots cannot be divided up into smaller units that have meaning on their own. Hence simple verb root. So the disyllabic examples I've included are kama, cook, and kulba, break. The trisyllabic ones are pujula, shoot, and parara, inspect. And the 2 examples with 4 syllables. Would that be quadrasyllabic? I don't know, perhaps. Anyway, the examples are Niromonjo, choke, and Ngaramani, increase. In Pama-Nyungan languages, most verbs belong to conjugations. But there are usually also a few frequent verbs that are irregular. In ngara we have 2 irregular verbs, one of them being the verb meaning go. And this verb is terribly irregular, I have to say. And for one thing, no less than 4 different roots are used with different tenses, aspects, and moods. So we get the monosyllabic ya and ya, the disyllabic yana, and the trisyllabic yananga. So simple verbs, sometimes also called simple verb constructions, or SVCs for short. Now it's time to look more at the complex verbs, or complex verb constructions, CVCs. But then I first need to clear the board and write other examples on here. So, BRB. And I'm back. So let's begin to scratch the surface of Pama-Nyungan complex verbs, shall we? And there will be more details in coming videos, because a few more videos about this subject will be necessary. There is a lot that could be said. Anyway, here we have two ngara sentences which will be analyzed in more detail in a coming video. What is important for us here and now are these parts here, because they are the complex verbs. And what we have here is palaganillo, marongollo. That man, poropiri, is scaling, yoda, fish. And wanjago, the dog, Nina, you, kandinin, will bite. And we have the present tense here, as in is scaling, and the future tense here, will bite. So the complex verb is called complex because it has two important parts that need to be present. And the abbreviations IV and UV are used. UV is not ultraviolet light in this context. This is uninflecting verb. This is a large and open class of words in Pama-Nyungan languages, which means that new words can come in. The inflecting verbs are called inflecting because they are the ones that take inflections. So here you find the conjugation markers, if such are in use in the language. You find the tense aspect mood marking and person marking, if it exists and if it attaches to the verb. This is a small and a closed class. In Pama-Nyungan languages there are usually between 10 and 15 inflecting verbs. And the uninflecting verbs usually occur together with a few and only a few of the inflecting verbs, creating different senses. You see, what this is a system of verb classification. What is verb classification? I'll come to that in a moment. A few words first about why these are different. In Pama-Nyungan languages, most inflecting verbs take main stress, which is a bit peculiar. And in Ngara, main stress always occurs on the first syllable of a word. These ones also take main stress. So, borrowing terminology from Dixon, Professor Dixon again, you can see these two as two phonological words. So, poro, piri, if I exaggerate a little bit. But nevertheless, together they make up one verb. So together they are one grammatical word. So to indicate that these are two phonological words, I write them apart like this. What is different here is that this inflecting verb does not attract main stress. Most inflecting verbs do, as I said, in Pama-Nyungan languages, but a few don't. So here we only have main stress in the beginning, here, kardinin. And that's why I write this as one word. So, I said that this is a system of verb classification. And what is that? Well, systems of noun classification are much more well known. Systems such as those found in Bantu languages in Africa, south of the Saharan Desert. And Swahili then is a Bantu language. Systems of noun classification are often compared to languages where we find grammatical gender, such as most Indo-European languages. Not English, of course. Here we have German, where they have the original Indo-European system of grammatical gender with 3 genders: masculine, feminine, and neuter. These types of systems are often compared, and some would say that they are very similar. I would say not really, because this system is much more logical and makes much more sense than this. Here, all nouns belong to one of usually only a few genders, and there is very little logic when it comes to what nouns end up in what gender. Usually, though, in Indo-European languages, nouns for males are found in the masculine grammatical gender, like der Mann, the man. Nouns for females are usually found in the feminine grammatical gender, like die Frau, the woman. If, of course, we can talk about males and females these days. I'm not sure that's politically correct in this day and age, but let's say we can. Then nouns for males are usually found here, and nouns for females usually here. But usually is the important word. We have this one, Mädchen, which makes no sense at all. Mädchen means girl, and this is a word in the neutral grammatical gender. It should, of course, logically be here. These systems are quite illogical and messy, and you just have to learn them, what words belong where. If we look at Swahili here, for some reason in Bantu linguistics that I don't understand, I haven't really studied Bantu linguistics, but for some reason singular words are placed in one noun class. The corresponding plural words are placed in another. I don't know why that is. It seems to me that they are doubling the number of noun clauses unnecessarily. But anyway, be that as it may. What you find is that humans are in one class, animals in another, plants in a third one, abstract nouns in a fourth one. Long objects are in one class, I don't remember which one, and round objects in another. So this makes much more sense and is easier to learn. And a system of verb classification is the same thing. You get a number of different classes, 10 to 15 usually, as I said. And in the classes you have verbs with specific semantic content. So that the semantic content of the verbs in different classes is different. And I don't want to say anything more than that here and now, because there is a lot to be said, and I think it's best that I probably take a little at a time. So I will be back with more videos about this. So, see you later.